All right, thank you everybody for joining us. I'm sure we'll still have a few more people coming in as we get going. Tonight's local coastal plan topic specific workshop is on environmentally sensitive habitat areas, otherwise known as ESHA. That's probably an acronym you're going to be hearing quite a bit as we go through our talk. So it's on the screen now as well. Our panelists tonight include myself, Cecily Condon, the project review manager for Permit Sonoma's planning permit project review division. It's a new job. Gary Helfrich, the project planner for our local coastal plan update, and John Mack, our natural resources manager for Permit Sonoma.
Evening, everybody. Nice to have all of you.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and get through these first couple slides. First is the ground rules for the meeting. Please be respectful to everyone's time. Written comments and input are welcome at any time, even outside of this workshop. We're going to wrap up tonight at 7 p.m. This meeting is being recorded, and I also want to let you all know that the question and answer functions and the chat functions have also both been enabled and will be kept for the meeting. Additionally, I wanted to let you know that those of you that are on your computers should be able to see the number of panelists in the room at this point, or not panelists, sorry, participants. At this point, it looks like we've reached 18. I will keep everyone updated as I see that, if I see that number rise further, but at this time it's 18. Total participants. It does appear that we already have one question in the chat, so I'm excited to see that being used. So sorry, first we'll be giving a short presentation. And when we get to the question and answer format, there is both the Q&A function enabled within the meeting, as well as I will allow people to come up and speak when they raise their hand. For those of you that are on your phones, it would be *9 to raise your hand to indicate that you'd like to speak. And for others, it would be using the raise hand function within the app.
Shall I take over?
Please do.
Okay, I'm Gary Helfrich. I am the project co-manager along with Cecily for the LCP update. And before we get into the discussion of ESHA mapping, just want to remind everybody of where we are on our project timeline. That we're right now in the middle here at the public review draft workshops, and they'll be finishing up soon. And our next steps will be to prepare a new Planning Commission draft for hearings, hopefully in the spring of 2021. Then the Board of Supervisors in summer of 2021, and hopefully going to the Planning Commission for certification in the fall of 2021. An important thing, though, that just everybody should be aware of is we're all looking at the same document that was first published in September of 2019. We've not made any running changes. We're keeping track of input. We're keeping track of policy options that we're developing, but we want everybody to be commenting on the same document, so everyone is kind of seeing the same thing. So just wanted to be clear on that, as there's been no changes to the public review draft since it was first published. In terms of implementation, this is the local coastal plan is part of a local coastal program. So it's important just to see how these relate to each other. The coastal plan is very similar to the general plan inland, and then it's implemented through the zoning code and that implementation is then interpreted through the administrative manual. So it is important to bear in mind that the local coastal plan is a long-range document that creates a vision and directs implementation, but the actual implementation will be the coastal zoning ordinance. How did that do that? It skipped. Anyhow, before we go into ESHA though, I think a lot of people are not aware of the people that work on our natural resources division. It's unusual to have this deep a bench of scientists and experts. So John, if you could just go over who's on your team and their contributions to the ESHA mapping.
Sure. So evening, everyone. So I'm John Mack. I'm the Natural Resource Manager at Permit Sonoma, and I have the pleasure of introducing you to my team. So where Permit Sonoma has a number of departments and programs, as those of you who built houses or done other kinds of development will know. But in the planning division, there's sort of three wings of planning. There's the project review plan part of where we actually process applications, private applications. There's a comprehensive planning, which is all about the general plan and all the policies and specific plans and things like that. And then there's the section that I manage, which is formerly called environmental review, now natural resources. And the name was actually changed because our purview expanded quite a bit from just doing CEQA NEPA review for public projects to quite a bit of other things. So on my team, so I'm an ecologist, botanist, wetland guy, wetland scientist by training. Unfortunately, I have staff that does a lot of that fun work, and I go to a lot of meetings more. But on my team, right now we have Robert Aguero, who's a registered professional forester and has lots of experience in forest ecology. I have a professional geologist who has specialty in hydrogeology, Robert Pennington. Rich Stabler, who is an all-around good naturalist who is botany, wetlands, herpetology, especially California tiger salamander, and wildlife experience. Deborah Waller, another with lots of experience in botany, wetlands, and wildlife. Oriana Hart, who is a hydrologist who helps us manage our stormwater program for the county and lots of water quality monitoring. And then I have two CEQA NEPA specialists, Jackson Ford and Chris Suppler. So that's the team that often is when we get called to say, hey, what do you think about things? And ESHA is definitely something that we get called on a lot, both at the project level and in terms of this LCP development.
Thank you, John. We did hear a lot during our workshops that wanted to see us add information and improve the ESHA mapping as much as possible. So I'd like to start with just making sure that we're all on the same page legally what ESHA is, because it's defined in the Coastal Act. And it's an area in which plant life or animal life or their habitats are especially rare or especially valuable. And that doesn't mean how much money they're worth, it's their environmental value because of their special nature or role in an ecosystem. And this is two parts, which could be easily disturbed or degraded by human activities and development. So it's just important to understand that that is the definition of ESHA. It's a specialized definition that applies in the coastal zone. There's a three-part test under a memo from the Coastal Commission to define an area's ESHA. It has to be a geographic area that's identified because of the presence of individual species of plants, animals, or because of the presence of a particular habitat that would support these species. And then these species or habitat must be rare or especially valuable. Pygmy forest would be an example of something that is just as a habitat, especially valuable. And then finally, this resource has to be easily disturbed or degraded by any human activities. So that is the three-part test that we go through when identifying something as environmentally sensitive habitat area. In the context of the map, so it's important to understand that from the standpoint of permitting development in the coast, that the Coastal Commission says that the maps really are an illustrative tool. They're to help us identify where ESHA is likely, but it's the actual presence of ESHA on a site. So whether or not it's on the map, if there's ESHA on the site, then that dictates that ESHA policies apply to that particular site, regardless of whether or not it's mapped. So this is the important thing. The map isn't the limit. The map is just a starting point. The map just represents our understanding today of where ESHA is likely. So in response to the input that we should reach out to other partners and improve our ESHA mapping, we did, and we reached, I'm not going to go read the whole list here, but many of these agencies were recommended by participants in our workshop, and we reached out to all of them, and they provided some really valuable input to improving our ESHA mapping. And then there were also additional data sources outside of just our mapping partners. John could, if anyone's got questions on what products were provided by these organizations, I think John can dig deeper into that. But here's what we start with. The ESHA map has to be certified by the Coastal Commission. This is one of the current ESHA maps from our LCP, and it was drawn in 1979, and it is drawn by hand. And this is the official certified map, not a digital copy of this, not a PDF of this, but the actual map. And it's pretty big. It's about 40 inches tall. And we have a pile of them in our office that we can't go into anymore. But the important thing is this is frozen in time in 1979, and our understanding of habitat values and areas that were important in 1979. And so this was important for us to update this as part of the LCP update. And that we took this old map and transferred it onto a new digital map and came up with these maps. And there were some things that the public pointed out are missing on here. We didn't have the sanctuary conservation areas. This is one of the biggest emissions. And as we reached out to agencies for more and more information, we discovered that there was really quite a bit that was missing. So now we have a new set of draft maps that I'm going to show you. So this is the same map that's part of the public review draft. This is the same map updated with our new information. So you can see that we've now got a lot of the small side tributaries of the creeks that in the earlier map, none of those were identified as being ESHA. In some of the developed areas like Serena del Mar, the two major, not major, but major for the area, creeks that have fairly sensitive riparian zones that flow through there are identified, and those have always been a constraint on development in that area, but now they're mapped. So this is where we are right now today with the map, and we've done this to all 10 maps for the coastal zone. So that's kind of the report out on where we are right now, and love to open the floor to input and questions and suggestions and recommendations.
Thank you, Gary. All right. As previously mentioned, we do have one question, although it says in the question and answer, it does say, where have you been? I don't know who that was to. I will ask for additional clarification. And as an update, the participants list is up to 24. Okay, and I do see one hand raised. Thank you.
Do we have audio? Thank you, Gary, for pointing out that beautiful map hand drawn in 1979 with felt pens. I think that is a document that should be framed in a museum somewhere here in Sonoma County. And we tend to think that our understanding of where ESHA is located, and I love the way you explained how the smaller tributaries are now reflected in the updated ESHA map. But it's not just that we understand better where ESHA is located. We are dealing with a moving target. We are dealing with a changing county. And a lot of things have happened before and after 1979 that affected ESHA. Things like the nuclear power plant excavation at Bodega Head happened before, obviously 1979, but there's been further development at Sea Ranch, Bodega Harbor, and more recently, Caltrans got the green light at Gleason Beach. So we have to look, I think, at a map that begins to show some of the historical declines in ESHA. In other words, an ESHA map that is reinterpreted over time. And I think the update of the LCP gives us a chance to create a dynamic map. In other words, the world is sophisticated enough now that we could have a map that shows when things change, as they change in real time. And the reason I say that is one of the obviously considerations about ESHA is historical declines. So I'd like to see us have a process-oriented map. I don't know, exactly which technology would be best for that, but there are plenty of them these days that we can look at and understand that some of these are a matter of diminishing returns. We have a coast that if we're not careful, it will disappear one little project at a time. And we know there are projects leaning on the door as various people see the coast as a potential profit center. I could think of a couple of them right now. Those should be weighed in the context of what's left. And we need a map that shows what's left, not what we had in 79. Thank you.
Thank you. First, Gary, can you bring the map back up while we have our comment period?
The current one, the old one, or the middle one? Well, I've
Let's
got
go
all three.
with the most recent,
Okay,
please.
there we go.
Although I do agree, I like the old one.
I
feel
love
like
the old one. The old one
I
is
missed an
great.
opportunity to make maps in crayon. That definitely would have been better for me. But I do want to also touch on that question. I do believe, if it's not already in there, we have been talking with the commission about finding a better way to more frequently update these maps so we can keep the rolling figure on this. There are also a lot of tools that we use that I believe John could touch on from other agencies that also go through update. This will not be our only map when we're identifying a site. So there are also additional tools that are used. So we aren't in any way limited to not using the most recent data, even if this map ceases to be as current in the future, which I do agree is quite possible. Additionally, there's significant, policy that goes with these maps, and trying to establish buffers and do prediction of where wetlands are going to begin to move, for example, and trying to, evaluate the future ESHA and protect that as well is one of the things that's being considered.
The other thing that's out there now today that links to ESHA closely is the Sonoma Vegetation Map, which was published by the Ag and Open Space District a few years ago. That was it was a it was a LIDAR, which is a very high resolution GIS data set exercise where they mapped to what's called the alliance level, which is a little bit high in terms of the type of plant community, but those alliances are linked to the California Fish and Wildlife Sensitive Natural Community List. They use the same terminology and try to describe them. And that map then gives you what you could call a good first approximation of where different forest types are, where grassland is, where different other types of plant communities are. And there's a list that CDFW maintains of which ones of those are, quote, sensitive. And so that map is an additional GIS layer that we query all the time in our day-to-day work for when, as a good first cut of, is there something on the site that is potentially sensitive that needs to be addressed? And that layer is available for the coastal zone as it is for the rest of the county also. And it would pick up on things that are presently not mapped, potentially, like different kinds of forest types. That map has MIGs mapped to the alliance level that would not show up as necessarily a type here. So it's another tool in the toolkit, so to speak.
Thank you. We do have a few questions popping up in the chat that I'm going to try to go through. I also want to draw people's attention to the question and answer tab as well. Also, as an update, it appears we have 24 participants on my tab at this time. So we do have a question. Are the revised maps now posted online? They are not yet posted online, but this presentation will be posted, I believe, next week. So at least this map will be posted as we begin to go through the others and complete them.
Let's see. We have a question in the Q&A.
Yes, thank you, John. How will the ESHA maps project or respond to climate change impacts and or other events such as fires? So this is, again, something that we're trying to work with the commission on. At this time, we need to go through a certification process to update as we update these PDFs. So this comes in both with that, there's the policy side of the answer here. And that policy side is that we are mapping it, we can map it as condition of approval or through our environmental review of individual projects to see the future extent of individual ESHA, as well as using that to establish appropriate buffers, considering the future possibilities related to climate change. And as for the fires, this last summer, those may be updated before we go through. We have not yet spoken to our GIS team about adding that to the ESHA maps in particular, though it is being added to our public safety maps. So if we can get a streamlined opportunity to improve the science, improve the maps as we get better science, that's something that we would be very happy to do. But at this time, we have to go through the full certification map each time that these maps are updated. But again, just because the map is not updated does not mean in any way that something is not going to be considered ESHA.
And to add to that, it was something we were talking about before this webinar, is that the commission won't certify a viewer right now. So we're kind of stuck technologically with what kind of product can be certified.
We're hoping after this last year in particular of everything going digital, that they may have a new view on certifying viewers, but we've not gotten any confirmation yet. Thank you. We have another question. Do parcel owners have access to all ESHA maps? For the currently certified maps, they do. Of course, those are completely public record, as well as the draft maps in the local coastal plan. And we'd be happy to go over them for what we can with these draft maps, with the understanding that they are currently draft. But they are not yet posted online or available to the public, nor are our 1979 scanned maps easily posted online because they actually can't, they were not scanned as single documents, and they're very difficult and fragile to handle. But if there's ever any questions, parcel numbers can be sent to myself or Gary, and we can also connect with our coastal team to make sure that someone can get a look at what the parcel is going to look like. But we will be posting these online as soon as we can. Thank you. I see another question. ESHA, please expand the definition to include recovery areas already designated for listed species, the historic and potential habitat of sensitive candidate and listed species. Recovery plans that are in progress being implemented and past plans should be protected or must be protected in order to be successful in the short and long term. Include the areas outside the coastal zone that may be altered, resulting in harm to species use. Use the coastal zone for some part of their life or diet. Corridors, foraging, and shelter are necessary and need to be generous to fully protect species that need to use coastal areas and open space more than ever.
Well, that's a really good comment. I have to think about, there's a lot in there to think about what we have, what data we have access to and how to map it. And then I'm not sure how much we could map things outside of the coastal zone, at least in the coastal plan itself per se.
Well, and it's important to remember this is not the only tool for protecting habitat in the coastal zone. This is a tool for protecting habitat, and it has a legal definition in the state code. So when we say ESHA, it's a legal term of art, and it means what the Public Resources Code says that it means. However, we can certainly use other tools and other methods to expand those protections.
Thank you. So we have another question in the comment or in the chat. How do ESHAs intersect with disaster preparedness, such as evacuation routes or emergency shelters? Does the current LCP draft identify any conflicts between those two objectives? So we discussed this a bit with our wildfire and emergency session earlier this week. Currently, there isn't any clear association between disaster preparedness or evacuation routes and ESHA within the local coastal plan that I'm aware of. But this is going to be something that's considered for any programmatic change towards, trying to streamline any type of emergency preparedness in the coast. Thank you. And another question in the chat. By the way, I see us up to 26 participants at this time. Will the maps reflect sea level rise and potential changes to permit requirements? We have a different set of maps in the local coastal plan update to address sea level rise specifically. But again, those policies related to future projections for ESHA would apply in those cases. All right. I do see a comment. Apparently that first question was because of a question on the meeting time. It states that the meeting was advertised as starting at 5:30 and ending at 6:30. If that is the case, I greatly apologize. It had actually been scheduled from 6 to 7 p.m. So we will continue to look into that, and I am extremely sorry, and thank you for your patience.
Yeah, I think that was that last minute help from ISD. It does say that on the webpage now. I just looked, so.
All right, it looks like that was changed when they went to put up the link. All right, and we have another comment in the Q&A. In the glossary, please define stream to include water courses of all kinds. Well, thank you for the comment. It is something that we would consider. I was wondering if John had any definition of stream that would come to mind. However, we will make sure that stream itself is identified within the glossary and work with our Natural Resources Division.
That's a term you would think is a easy to definition that everyone agrees on, but really it doesn't. But we can take a look at the definition that's in there for sure.
All right, thank you. At this time, Gary, do you have the new map available that shows Bodega Bay?
Take another question. I'll grab the Bodega Bay map
All right, thank you.
because it's not easily available.
All right. So Gary, if you're going to post, actually, this is going to go into the next question too. So Gary, once you pull up that next map, will you also show, I'm assuming it means you'll be pulling up the PDF so we could see how zooming in, what level of detail we can get to?
Correct. Yes.
Thank you. And I believe these do have parcel boundaries on most of the maps.
I guess I have a question for you, Cecily. So when this data will live in our GIS system as layers, and how much of this gets included in the zoning viewer? That's our public facing part of our GIS layers.
So after certification, we can post a non-certified viewer as part of our implementation program. So the viewer itself wouldn't be the certified maps. These PDFs would always be the, until there's change with commission policy, these would be the Coastal Commission certified maps, but we could import layers into a viewer to make it visible after that certification. The biggest challenge there would be making sure that the density of information is appropriate. I'm not sure every single layer would be applied in the same way. I don't know that much about the GIS mapping itself, but it's something that we are looking towards implementation of a viewer, even though we'll have to put a disclaimer that it's not going to be the certified map.
Okay, so I've switched out the PowerPoint with the actual PDF, and I've got the series, so we can look at anything in the series now.
So I think there was a question about zooming, maybe try zooming in to something. And
yeah, I mean, we can, since this is not a PowerPoint, I can zoom in. But where do you want to zoom in to?
Oh, I thought one of the person asking question was how far can you zoom in? You know, what's the level of detail? And it's,
oh, you can zoom in much further than the PDF. On the PDF, because of accessibility issues, it is an image file and not a vector file. But you would be able to go in pretty much as far as you want to go. This is still giving, you know, let me drag that up there and over here. And you know, some of these, John, you could probably explain this better than I can, but some of these habitats don't have hard edge definitions in terms of their geographic location, and some do. So some of these are polygons around an occurrence of something. You generally see something that isn't a natural looking shape. It's a square or part of a circle. And other places you'll see something that clearly has a mapped boundary. And if you look here, some of those areas around the creeks are mapped.
Yeah, you can see the riparian corridor buffers around the creeks. But then within that, there's these more diffuse polygons, which I'm guessing those are probably wetlands.
Yeah, in there. I don't know if my cursor turns into a crosshair when it's on the PDF.
And again, just something to bring attention to as far as the level of detail with the maps, because these maps are really, you know, just the starting point. If there's the question of, oh, you know, it's really hard to identify if this is really on that parcel boundary or not, that is something that is confirmed in the field by a biologist.
We had a question about, are we still using the raise hand feature?
Yes, we are. I apologize if there was a hand raised that I didn't catch. Please raise it again and I will immediately carry it over. Oh, see, it looks like the problem is your hand is popping in and off. So I'm going to go ahead and move you up.
Thank you, Cicely. And I'm sorry, this is my 4th Zoom meeting today, and I'm just getting to this late, even though this was really important for me. And so I missed obviously a critical thing. It is good to see that you have more Zoom capability with these maps, but I must have missed a part of the presentation or afterwards through a question about the public having access to the ArcGIS maps that you would actually really be able to see a satellite image and zoom in and have all those different layers. And I just want clarification. Did you say that would not be available until after the LCP was certified?
I think the answer is multi-part here. The answer is not necessarily. However, the viewer can't be certified right now. I mean, so there's two things. Is we do have the technology to provide these maps at the very highest level of detail possible. I mean, that's technologically not a problem. The actual map that gets certified right now will be a static map, and we're working with the Coastal Commission on that. It's really a matter of policy catching up with technology. But we can and we will make this available on GIS. It's just, to be clear, that's not the certified map. The certified map will be the PDF probably.
And the reality of the timing is that it takes several months to put the viewers together from our GIS team. So it is something that we will be working on, but it is a very resource intensive project, and it will definitely be something that we'll be working towards, but I don't know that it would happen before or after certification at this time.
And I want to add to that is just remember, this was early, perhaps this happened in the beginning of the presentation. The map is only the beginning, not the end. That the map is a starting point, and protections don't end at the edge of these map boundaries.
Yeah, and this is all very encouraging to hear, because I know that part of the goal in this update was to have more accurate mapping. And so to know that the public would be able to have access to that mapping, I think is a really important part of a local coastal plan. So just wanting to reinforce that, and thank you for your efforts in doing that, and looking forward to seeing that happen.
Thank you. All right, and it appears we have a question. Is there any map that shows the impact of overcrowding on the landscape or habitat?
I guess maybe a could be, it's the clarification like could be like overcrowding as in like too many people in a recreational or a habitat area, things, that kind of overcrowding. If that's the case, then I don't, this map doesn't really go into that kind of information. And I'm not aware of a map or a map layer.
I am not aware of a specific data source for that. I know there are policies related to in protecting ESHA and in relationship to public access. But as far as a mapping solution, I am not sure that there is one.
And there could be another solution. The ESHA maps, the intent here is fairly narrow. It's to show where the resources are located as we know it using best available science. So it is meant as a resource to know where these resources are physically located. The impacts and interactions between other activities are important, and policies cover that, but it's not part of the ESHA mapping. The ESHA mapping would be the beginning of the analysis of what the impacts would be.
Thank you. And we have, oh, all right. I saw a hand. There we go. I believe this is who just had asked that question. Those with their hand raised had been allowed to talk.
Yeah, I think you've answered the question, but I think we do have some indication of areas that have been disturbed by too many visitors. And it would be nice at some point to find out where those are as a way of figuring out how to deal with them.
Thank you. Another question has come in the chat. Will the map data be importable into various GIS problems, e.g. non-ArcGIS open source apps? I don't know enough about mapping data to be able to answer this question. And since we're in the very beginning stages of that viewer project, I don't know that our GIS team would have a full answer yet. But I do believe that the data can be made available as public information. But again, most of this data is also being originally from other public data sources, like, and those sources can be shared.
Yeah, ultimately, whether it exists digitally or on paper, it's public information and available. I don't know what the procedure is for requesting GIS layers from the county.
All right, and we have another question. Is there a way to see the draft new map so we can reasonably comment? We will be at minimum posting the ones shared tonight next week.
Oh, and actually to follow up on the last commenter's question, it at least has been our experience internally that all of our ArcGIS layers and information are interoperable with QGIS, which is an open source GIS platform. I can't speak to other platforms, but we do know that it works with that platform.
Thank you for that confirmation, Gary. All right, we have a specific question about Cheney Gulch, which is defined in the draft LCP as a priority site for aggregate products. This is an area 2.2 miles east of Bodega Bay. I'm wondering how close to ESHA it is to the area. ESHA is to the area.
I've got to find that next map in the series here. So just a sec.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on to another question while we have Gary find that map for us. All right, we have a question from Rue. It is good to see riparian corridors, but it can't tell where the wetlands might be. It would be very helpful to see the preliminary maps as amended so we can review them prior to going to the commission. And these will be posted in advance of the Planning Commission. And while Gary is still working on those maps, how many feet from the center of the stream to the edge of the protected area? So the riparian corridor buffer varies significantly from anywhere from 50 feet to 200 feet. There are additional identification policies in the LCP for establishing buffers on a per project basis as well.
I don't believe the 200-foot buffers on any, other than the Russian River, is the only place that would apply, I think. All the other streams would be 50 to 100, depending on the stream. That's the riparian corridor ordinance, but I think there's other setbacks spelled out in the LCP policies.
The problem I'm having is getting it onto the off the laptop screen and onto the primary screen. It's a sizing problem. Let's just try another way, which is because the problem is Cheney Gulch is right between two maps. So it's kind of a tough one to find. And it's not, no, I know exactly where it is. It's a challenging one to, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this right now. Wait, here we go.
There is a question for once you have all the GIS map available, wouldn't it be also possible to include layers of other information such as sea level rise, vulnerability, so that you have an integrated image of impacts to ESHA? So that actually would be what I would call a GIS analysis, where a GIS analyst would overlay 2 layers and find the intersection points, and then create a new layer that shows where ESHA overlaps with sea level rise, which would be I agree would be an interesting analysis to see.
Yes, the long-term goal is similar if anyone has used our zoning or other interactive map viewers on our website. The long-term goal would be to have information beyond, it would not necessarily be ESHA specific. The challenge to that is the amount of data and layers to the ESHA maps in particular mean that we're not sure if every single map, we could do a coastal viewer that has everything, but it would make sense if we're going to combine anything with ESHA that we would choose the sea level rise map. So we would be picking which layers are most compatible to go together if in the case that we don't have the resources to put everything on one map. For example, the scenic landscape units or the exemption areas or any of the other things that we would plan on mapping. But again, sea level rise and ESHA, those environmental related maps, I believe would be the first that we would attempt to put together.
So Cecily, I believe this has got the Cheney Gulch quarry is east of Highway 1, above the Highway 1 symbol in that area. I don't have, since these are static PDFs, we can't drop the aerial on there and see, but hopefully can people see where I'm swinging my cursor around?
Mhm.
It's in this area.
Yes, and just to confirm, there's a question that the Cheney Gulch is regarding the old quarry,
Yes, I understand that.
Okay, that was a confirmation asked for. All right, so we do have a question. Are we only mapping blue line streams?
John, do you know the answer to that? Because there's a number of these that I think are much smaller, more ephemeral than.
I do not know the answer to that.
Yeah, we
have to
can
go-
get back to you with that.
I would say this looks finer than a blue line stream map to me, just looking at it, but I am not positive what was the source data for this map.
Well, I do know, I'm pretty sure that in the Gleason Beach area, it's got tributaries of Scotty Creek shown, and Scotty Creek is the only blue line creek there. But yeah, we to give you an accurate answer, we're going to have to look into that, and we can get back to you.
Thank you. And Gary, can you confirm if the ag setbacks are different for riparian corridor in the coastal zone? Because our riparian corridor ordinance is actually not currently adopted into the coastal zoning code.
I don't want to give an off the cuff answer to that. So let me look it up, and we can respond to somebody, give you a good, accurate, comprehensive answer.
Thank you. And yes, we do know that the quarry itself is no longer operational. I believe that is stated, but if that's not, that's something that is planned to be updated.
That's actually another area that my staff manage, the quarry mining, aggregate resource mining program. Yeah, that's not an active site right now.
All right, and it looks like there's an additional follow-up to that about whether or not it's referring to the previous old quarry or to a new use. So that's another one of those that we will need to look into with John's team to identify if that was a holdover that had not gotten updated, or if there is anything, there is nothing proposed there at this time, but if there's anything else known.
Yeah, if you know something, let me know. I'm not aware of any use permits or active mining permits in that area, in that part of the county. Unless the one possibility is there could be vested rights that would retain, even though they don't have an active mining permit, they might still have vested rights that could be acted upon. But I'd have to research that. I'm not familiar. That's not an active site that we inspect right now as part of our state mining and reclamation program.
Thank you. Gary, there's been a request to show a map or maps where the forest timber is further north. And there's also a question that says SN is on the map, but not within the key. what does it stand for? SN.
SM is salt marsh. It's an M.
Yeah, if there is an N anywhere, I'd appreciate getting that comment in writing because it should be SM, which is the salt marsh.
So there's Sea Ranch North.
Thank you. And can you scroll over so we can see a little bit of the key to go along with that? I know it's very difficult. Oh, it does say SN on this one as well. So can you scroll over?
Yeah, that's seabird nesting sites. That's different.
Okay, I believe that was the same and we just need to add it back to the key on the last map.
Okay.
Thank you. Good catch. And yes, there are a lot of streams identified. That was one of the comments when we scrolled up to the further north part of the county. Well, furthest north part, really.
Right.
All right, I'm looking and double checking the hands. And we've been asked for going one more south. That's our Sea Ranch Part 2. As is, I think, fairly clear looking at these maps. You know, it is one of our biggest challenges with breaking these up has been using the sub areas in order to get a reasonable map with how narrow our coastal zone is. But thank you, Gary, for going to the Sea Ranch South. And we are just about out of time, though I will keep an eye out for just another couple moments to see if we have any last minute questions. And we do have a hand raised. And there we go.
Quick question. Are you able to blow up this map a little bit?
Oh, sure. No problem.
I was thinking of the area around the airport. Okay, you don't really show the airport, I guess.
Well, no, we just show the parcel boundary. It's
Okay.
easy enough to add the airport on.
Yeah, it's a little bit further south, parallel to Sea Ridge. There you go. So it's that open space there.
Right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
I don't have my usual setup tonight. I'm not seeing any additional questions. I will say, I don't know that I made an announcement, but at the highest number I saw on our participants list was 27 this evening. I always like to give that recap whenever possible. I'm doing one final scroll. And we had one question. Can we go one more further south while we're wrapping things up?
Thanks,
We're just
Jeremy.
trying to exercise Gary's mouse hand here.
Yeah,
It isn't my mouse hand. It is the, I have to transfer it from the laptop to the desktop, and the way that works with the Zoom screen is, well, let's just say there was a short learning curve there.
Gary, my desk for tonight is a changing table. I think
I
we'll
know
manage.
I know it is. No, I thought it was a TV dinner tray. There.
Alrighty, thank you, Gary. All right, we had one more question. Is there a way that you can show who the participants are in the Zoom? I will see if it's possible to get a report. I don't know how if I can share my screen and show that. I guess I could try it. I could bump Gary off and show my screen. Does seem that we've had a few people start dropping off, but of course we have hit time, so that makes sense. I wonder if it'll let me do this.
And don't forget, contact us. We want to hear from you. Operators are standing by. No, seriously, we really do want to hear from everybody and get your input and get your recommendations. That's going to stay up until you kick me off, you know.
It works.
It does.
All right, cool. So there we go. I will make it an effort to do this at the future workshops, at least for a few moments, just so people can kind of see who's coming in.
I'm seeing a picture of your baby.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
you
see
can't
Iris.
see it? Oh, well, okay, she's really cute, but I guess that didn't work. Sorry about that, guys. Well,
That was
All
better
right.
than the participants list from my perspective. So
yes. So let's see. Yeah, we will work on trying to make the participants visible, or seeing how we can do that, at least at a check-in at some point within the meetings. So the next two workshops that are going to be happening are going to be the rescheduled vacation rentals workshop and the rescheduled pesticides workshop. Neither of those have firm dates set yet, but we will be sending out a notice next week.
And it will be at least 10 days in advance.
And it will be at least 10 days in advance with the right time.
And an active link.
So thank you all so much for the participation. Oh, and a screenshot of the participants. That's a great idea. Because that I can share. So that is, I think, a great tool. I will attempt next time to do it when we actually still have all of our participants present, but I really appreciate the suggestion. There we are. Did it work this time?
Yeah. there you go.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, if it didn't work this time, I'm going to bed. All right, Jim, if you can either reply to that email or that Gary had posted, I will type it into my answer to your question so you get it, get the notice for future meetings. We can add you to our contacts list to ensure that you get that. One moment. So Gary, can you pull that slide back up? See, now we're racing to see who can get you the email address faster.
There you go. It's the email address.
All right, thank you. Okay, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. We will see you all soon, but we're gonna be taking a break next week and work on getting some materials up and posted. And then as stated, the next workshops will be noticed next week and with at least 10 days notice. Thank you and everybody have a great night.
Thanks to all the participants for joining us on a Friday night. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Pleasure
Thank
having
you.
you.